Hello guys, good morning, what's up? I'm making a bonus video here this week because I'm kind of adapting and adjusting to this different truck, this Western Star, and I'm going to show you some driving footage after this clip where I think I pretty much got it figured out. But while I'm just sitting here with all these trucks in front of me at Scott's, I'm waiting to get loaded. I'm gonna be sitting here for a while, so I figure I might as well make a video clip for the beginning of this video. This is just bonus footage. It's not related to my story or anything else. I'm just gonna show you the truck and, you know, all the differences in it. I think maybe some people are a little interested in a Western Star. Not many people have had too much exposure to them. They are Canadian trucks, so I mean, I was curious about it, so I figured other people might be curious about it. I'll just start out showing you the gauges. Now, that if you include the tach and the speedometer, you've actually got 16 gauges up here on the dash. Got a voltmeter, manifold PSI, oil PSI, oil temperature, transmission temperature, coolant temperature, engine exhaust temperature. Okay, the first gauge over on this side should be pretty obvious to everybody. This is your PSI, your reservoir pressure for your air tank, for your air brakes. You've got up here, this is your applied pressure to the brake pedal, which I'm not going to push right now because the brakes are set. And then below that, you've got the axle temperature for the actual, you know, the axle that's getting power going to it right there. Suspension, air pressure. Another meter for the battery, but this is amps instead of volts. And you got a rear axle temperature gauge, and just below that you got the fuel. Now there are some blank toggle switches over here, which I'm not sure what would have went there had the original owner of the truck gotten those extra options, so I'm not really sure. But there's a mirror defogger, mirror adjuster. This window right here is manual, but that one over there is supposed to be a power window, but it doesn't work. Up here in the top left, you got the engine brake and the different settings for that. Now, I'm no expert at this, you know, I'm just guessing, but I would think that, you know, a manifold PSI, an exhaust thermometer, this stuff right here, this would be related to your engine brake actually, because you know, the more you use your engine brake, you're dumping all that compression straight out of your engine. It's not going through the exhaust. Am I right about that? So if you use your engine brake too much, it's going to cause these particular components on the engine to heat up. So that's why you'd want to regulate that and keep an eye on that, so just to make sure you, hey, if you're going down a mountain using your engine brake, yeah. So I think that's related to that. Like, it's, from what I understand, it's actually not good for the engine to use the engine brake to begin with, but it's necessary, and sometimes you really need it, but you don't want to overuse it, because it's actually harder on the engine whenever you use the engine brake, from what I understand. So that's probably why there are gauges to monitor that. Now, another thing I want to point out is that there are two separate gauges for your axles in the back on the tractor, And this is to monitor a leak. If there is a leak, you're obviously going to have more friction in your transfer case on your axle, because all that fluid inside of your axle, that it's there to keep the metal from building up too much friction, too much heat, just like inside of your engine, right? So that's what those are for. That's why those are important, because if you see something going up abnormally, these usually stay extremely low. They hardly ever heat up. If you see it heating up abnormally, that would be a telltale sign that you've got some kind of a leak in your axle, your transfer case, or whatever else have you. So that's what those are for. You got a toggle switch for your engine fan, your idle speed, and then you got a button to trigger your engine diagnostics, which right below here you got a digital screen to kind of go through that. If there's a fault code or something, you can look up on that. And then you got all your controls for your headlights. You got a toggle switch for your dash lights, actually, which is kind of cool. You got a toggle switch for your clearance and your ID lights. And you got a separate one for your trailer clearance and ID lights right there. You got a utility light, sleeper light. None of this stuff works in this truck, but it did at one point. And then down at the bottom, you got your diff lock, your airbag dump for the suspension, and you got your fifth wheel slide. And then over here, you got all your settings for your wipers. Down here, you got climate control, which right now, there's no fan in this truck. So basically, there's no vent fan. So none of that stuff works. If I want heat, that's all I've got. There's actually a coolant leak with the AC line, so if I get hot or anything like that, I'm screwed, because all I can do is put this window on the driver's side down, the manual window. The window on the passenger side, again, it doesn't even go down. But for heat, you know, when it's cold in the morning, I just turn the bunk fan on, the heater's on with that. The thing about this truck is that there are some levers under the hood. I don't know if you'd really call them levers. They're like valves that you have to open and close to turn the AC on for the sleeper. But like I said, I've got a leak right now, so I can't actually turn the AC on. That's why I'm wearing shorts today in February, because it's going to get almost to 70 degrees today, and it's going to be really hot in this truck. Up here, you've got your stereo, which they actually put some aftermarket speakers in this truck. The speakers in this truck sound a lot better than the ones in that Freightliner I was driving. And then up here, you've got these toggle switches. Now, I'm not sure, and I haven't tested it yet. I'm actually surrounded by trucks right now, but there's no city horn on the steering wheel. So I'm thinking that these are your horns up here. Maybe one of them is a city horn, maybe one of them is the actual air horn. This truck does have air horns on it, but I noticed that there's no like pull string or anything up here where there would normally be for the air horn. So I'm guessing that's what that is up there. Like I said, I'm not going to test my theory right now because I'm surrounded by trucks, and it would be very obnoxious to blow my air horn right now. But the last thing I want to show you is the sleeper. Now, I've had somebody, a regular viewer of my channel, actually say, he left a comment in the first video I made about this truck, the first time I tried to drive it and I utterly failed. He said that this is actually one of the best trucks ever made, and that was his opinion about it. I didn't ask him why he thought that, but if I could guess, it must at least partially have something to do with the sleeper, because the size of the sleeper, I'm about to show it to you. I'm gonna get back here. Might be a little hard to see, a little dark in here. Let me change the settings. It's a little bit better. The sleeper in this truck is huge. There's actually my fan right there. The fan for the dash. Yeah. It's not even installed. But there's a huge window over here, which is standard with Western Star. You got like a big window on that side. Haven't tested it yet to see if it's actually helpful for when you're blindside backing. But you got a lot of storage back here. The first thing I thought about when I got in this truck the first time is like, I went to reach for the net, you know, the little cubby up there above the steering wheel where you would keep your paperwork. And I was thinking, what, that's odd. Like, you got to have somewhere to put that stuff. Well, it's all back here. And I know you guys can't see that, but there's just tons of cubby room and storage room up here. It's kind of in a weird place, but yeah. Just to give you an idea about how big the sleeper is, you know. I'm not exactly a small guy, you know, but it's huge back here. There's so much space. This would actually be, you know, if this truck was in better shape, this would be an ideal truck to go over the road in because it's got so much space back here. But again, nothing works. You got a whole station right here to control your climate and everything else. An alarm clock. This truck is 23 years old. I looked in the door frame at the label on it to see what year it was. It's a 2001. So that means that, you know, this truck is over half of my age. This truck has been around for, you know, over half of my existence on planet Earth. So this is a very old truck. But just to give you let me switch back to the other setting now. That's a little bit better. Here's a vantage shot of, you know, facing front from the sleeper. They actually put a bed in, a mattress in here. There didn't even used to be a mattress in here. But I like the quilted, you know, plushy backdrop back there. It's the same thing up on the ceiling in the cab portion. At one point, this would have been a pretty nice truck, you know. As it is now, not so much, but you know, this could be one of those trucks that, you know, the right person finds it, they bought it, they liked it enough, they could put money into it, like a crap load of money into it, and fix it up. Oddly enough, now this is something that I noticed that I thought was weird. Oddly enough, you've got carpet up there in the cab section, and you've got canvas or whatever that is. It's just that cheap plastic lining on the floor back here in the sleeper. You would think it would be the other way around, but it's actually, it's not. And I think that's kind of weird. But yeah, that's the truck. Now the last thing I want to show you, because I did actually figure out how to drive this thing without grinding the gears. The last thing I want to show you is what my problem was and why I think I was having such a problem with the shifter. But if you guys notice, the shifter is different, and it's definitely different from any shifter I've seen in any other truck. I'm sure this isn't exclusive to Western Star. This is all about Eaton Fuller and the way that they made transmissions back in the day. Or maybe they still make them this way. I don't know. I haven't been in enough trucks. This is the first non-10-speed truck I've ever been in, but notice the curve in it. And I mean, that curve is necessary. It actually makes it easier to drive, and I'm guessing that the reason why it's kind of it's not just tilted this way toward the driver's seat to make it easier in case your arms are too short to shift it. It's also kind of tilted back just slightly to get closer to the seat. And well, because of that, I think this has more to do with what I'm going to be talking in the driving portion of this video. What I'm going to be talking about more than anything is because of the curve in the shifter itself. So the reason why, I think the main reason why I was having so many issues with it is because the point of contact with your hand on the shifter is not in line with the gearbox. It's all the way over here, which it's offset, which kind of makes it weird for the muscle memory and the range extension in your arm as you're moving the shifter itself. Now if you look up here, there's a diagram of the shift gates and the pattern and everything else, and if you look at the shape of it, it's like two H's put together. But I noticed, and I'm going to be repeating myself a lot in this video, but I noticed that with this particular shifter, it's not actually an H. If you want to shift this thing without grinding, you actually kind of have to imagine an X. So are you guys familiar with the logo for that clothing company Under Armour? You know what I'm talking about, where it's got like a U and then it's got like an A, but the actual shape of the U and the A, it's kind of curved and it looks like an X. Well, that's kind of what the shifter is like. Now with this being a 13 speed, all of your gears are actually over on that right side. You're not actually ever going to use low very often. I mean, I know you got to use reverse a lot, but as far as driving the truck, just driving it, not backing up, not doing anything else, just driving it on the road, you're going to stay in the center and to the right the whole time. Well, I've found that instead of envisioning that H shape when I'm shifting, it's actually easier and it prevents grinding the gears if you think about it like an X. And like I said, a curved X, kind of like that Under Armour logo is curved. So I'm gonna show you what I mean while I'm just sitting here. I'm gonna apply the clutch. I got the brake set. I'm gonna cycle through the low side to show you that you can't just push straight up. You can't normally just push straight up with this thing. If you do, it's gonna catch right there. You're gonna have resistance, and that's what I meant when I repeated myself several times and I said, you know, this thing feels like rubber. So I've noticed that to get it to go into gear, you kind of have to push it up and to the left. Up and to the left, kind of like that angle, the angle of the top left side of an X. Now when you bring it back down to go into second gear, it's going to return back to that center position, and then you just go straight down with it like that. Now when you want to go into third gear, you have to come over here and you have to push this way. And the weirdest of all is fourth gear or eighth gear, which you got to come over here and then you got to pull back down toward yourself. So that part of it's not really like an X. It's like you push all the way over here and then you pull it back toward. I mean, it's really, you're pulling it down, but because you're off centered with, because you're sitting over here, it actually feels like you're pulling it toward yourself. And it's just these simple movements that explain why I was having so many issues with this truck and getting it to go into gear. So it's weird like that. I mean, you would never shift like that. You never have to go off in these different directions when you're shifting, say, a Freightliner 10-speed, a shifter that just comes straight up from the floor like that, right up above the gearbox. But I guess it's because it's off-centered. Like I said, that must be the only reason why you feel like you're moving your arm in these different directions that you've never had to move it in before when you're shifting. And so that's really the only reason why I was having so many issues shifting the truck and why I was grinding the gears so much. It had nothing to do with matching my road speed with the RPMs or anything like that. I mean, all that stuff, I know it's fundamental to me. But now that I've figured out, you know, exactly what to do, I can more or less shift the truck without grinding at all, which you're going to see in this video that I'm actually grinding quite a bit. but I can do it fluently. I can do it. I can speed up, I can slow down, all while cycling through each gear. And the last thing I want to explain is because the footage you're about to see, I screwed up pretty bad, and it could have potentially been bad for the transmission. And it's because I can't flip this forward right now. It's on the low side. It's locked out whenever you are on the low side, so I can't, you know, flip this forward. But here's what I did, and you're gonna see it, and I'll show you when it happens. I'll notate it or whatever on the screen. But I was demonstrating the auxiliary splitter here and how you can use it in traffic. And I'm not going to take the time now to explain why it's a good thing and why it can help you make things easier for you when you're sitting in traffic and stuff like that. But what I did is I was in, I think, 5th gear, and I was on the low side of 5th gear. So I was right here on the low side. I flipped it up to the higher side to get the extra little bit out of the gear itself. And I was planning on speeding up a little bit more and going into 6th gear. So I flipped it back down to the low side and was going to put it in 6th gear. Well, then the traffic started to slow down. And so then I changed my mind. I was like, no, I shouldn't go into 6th gear. I should stay in 5th gear because traffic's slowing down. I should actually set myself up to go back into 4th gear, which is on the low side for the main splitter. And so what I did is I had this on high, and I flipped it back down to low, and then I let go of the throttle. And as soon as you do that, you need to rev the engine. If you don't rev the engine, it's still going to try to catch the low side of whatever gear you're in, and if you're going too fast, it'll jerk the hell out of the truck and potentially, you know, do damage to that particular gear in the transmission. So you're talking about gearbox damage there. I forgot to rev the engine up because I you know, in the moment I was planning on doing one thing. I had it all set up in my mind, and then I changed my mind at the last second, and I didn't compensate for the extra step of revving the RPMs to get the gear to catch. So it caught the gear with the RPMs too low, and they just shot up real quick, and it jerked the whole truck. So I just wanted to explain that. And I'll shut up now, and I'll get on with the rest of the video. Thanks for watching. What's up, everybody? Jared here with TME. So that last video that I published was from about a week ago. So I've been driving this truck for the past week, and I think I got it figured out for the most part. I think I understand the problem that I was having with the shifter and why it felt so weird. And it is a very strange, odd shifter. Maybe I'm just strange, maybe it's just me, but there's a certain way you have to do this to not grind not very straightforward. There's a little diagram up here that shows you the shift gate for each gear, where it's at. But it's very misleading because I've come to find that on paper it looks good, looks like it makes sense, but in theory and in testing it's not very accurate, because you have to do more than an H pattern to shift this thing. Now, with it being a 13 speed, that's how I visualize it as I shift. I'm not looking over on the bottom left side for 6th gear like I would if I was driving a 10 speed. I'm just visualizing an H, but I'm really not even doing that. I'm kind of visualizing an X, because more so than the shape of an H, it's more like an X, and I'll explain what I mean by that as I'm driving it. But no, this is just raw video of me, you know, experimenting, practicing, getting better at driving this truck. I am still grinding gears, and I'm having an issue with 5th gear specifically. I'll put it in gear after because on this truck with this transmission, 5th gear is on the high side, so you flip that up like that to get to 5th gear. Now I'm in the same position as 5th gear, like this is 1st, but it's also 5th. And I'm finding that instead of pushing straight up, I'm having to push up and left. If I don't push up and left, then it's gonna grind, it's not gonna go into gear. So that's what I mean by the X pattern. Let me show you. I'm going up and diagonally to get it into that gear, and then I'm coming over and then down this way to get it into 4th gear. But I'm finding that each time I take it out of a specific position, I'm having to return back to the center of that H, or the center of that X, and then having to go back out in the corresponding direction of the gear. And I'm hoping that with this camera angle you can kind of see what I'm talking about as I do this. But that bottom right position is actually even more unique, because I'm not going down like that. I'm actually going over and then back toward me to get it to go in gear. I'll show you what I mean. I'll try to go back down to 4th gear the next time I have to stop, which I'm sitting through a lot of traffic lights right now, so it shouldn't take very long. Okay, I'm in 7th gear now. I'm going to downshift to 6th gear. Now 5th. And I'm going over that way. Alright, now 4th. See that? I had to go out and then back toward me to get it to go into gear. 2nd gear right there. And if you do it like that every time, just right, you're not as likely to grind the gears. Another thing I've already mentioned in that previous video, how sensitive the clutch is. Like, you have to keep your heel on the floor and just slowly tilt upward. Bring your toes back with your heel on the floor until you feel it start catching. When you see the hood rise up a little bit, start shaking, that's when you start to ease off the brake pedal. If not, you're either going to roll backwards or you're going to stall. If you do it too fast, you'll stall it, even when the trailer's not loaded. So I'm coming up. You can see it and you can hear it when it starts to catch. in that bottom right. Again, there it is. And I'm having an issue when I put it in 5th gear. A lot of times it'll go into gear, but it won't catch the gear. So I won't actually be in gear. I got to take it back out and either downshift back to 4th gear, or just force it to go into that 5th gear position, which probably isn't so good for the transmission. But it seems to do that a lot when I'm loaded and I'm going uphill. It'll do that a lot. And I guess it's just because the gears are so worn out. This truck, I found out, it is a Western Star, obviously, but the model is just some numbers and letters, and I'll never remember what they are. But it is a 2001 Western Star, straight out of Canada. But yeah, my point that I want to make here is that, you know, figuring out that to shift this truck, you actually have to do things that you wouldn't think, like that, to do it without grinding. That's why I was having so many issues the first time I tried to drive this truck, because I didn't know that. I've never driven a truck where you had to do that. Like, I looked at the diagram up here and I'm thinking, okay, this isn't much different than an Eaton 10-speed. It's just the gears are in different places, but it's the same pattern pretty much. You got all the same positions. But then when I went to try to drive it, I tried to move in the positions that it says to move in on this diagram, and it just didn't work. It took me probably about 4 days to actually realize how to shift it. And I don't know, my question would be, if you're knowledgeable about these things, if you've driven 13 speeds before, or you've driven older trucks before, because this is by far the oldest truck I've ever driven. This truck's 23 years old, you know? That's over half of my age. So, you know, unless you've driven a truck this old, like, my question would be, if you have driven a truck that's old, a standard transmission truck, is this normal? Should I have to be going in all these weird directions to get it to go into gear, to find the gear? Is that normal, or is that just what happens over a span of time as the gearbox starts to wear out? Is that a normal thing? Or is that just because it's worn out? That's my question. As I get on the interstate, I accelerate into my lane. I'm gonna attempt to go to cycle through all 13 of the gears. Obviously, I've already gone through the first 5 of them. Even though, I mean, this really isn't necessary, but now, like, there's 5 high. That's 6 low. 6 high. 7 low. 7 high. a little bit more out of that top gear, I'll shift it into 8 high. See, I can downshift just fine without using the auxiliary splitter. I wanted to show you guys how you got to drop this thing, how you got to shift it. It's weird. It's different from it's different from what I've been exposed to as a truck driver. I've never ever dealt with a gearbox like this where you got to go in these weird directions to get it to go into gear. And it's not like it's a huge deal. I mean, it's these movements I'm talking about, they're very subtle movements, but it makes all the difference between grinding and shifting as smooth as butter, you know what I'm saying? And yes, I forgot to put it in high. I forgot to use this splitter just now, so that's why I grinded. Like I said, I still grind the gears, but I'm not doing it like I was before. And I feel like I have way more control over the truck. Now, I know I said that it's not necessary to use this auxiliary splitter, but I do use it in certain circumstances. If I'm in traffic, especially like right now, I'm on the interstate and the traffic is, you know, stopping and going. But what it does when you are in a mid-range gear is it'll give you a little bit extra without having to shift up or shift down. And it's actually just an overdrive. It's meant to save fuel using it, you know, that's really what it's there for. So if you're cruising like this, it can come in handy. You want to control your speed. You start to get up there to the top of your range where it's time to shift. You just flip that switch up and it gives you a little bit more. And then when you want to go back down, lower the RPM, lower the road speed, and then just rev it. I screwed up. But I know I said in my last video that the reason why I was grinding so much is because I was trying to shift it too fast. None of that's true. That's just what I thought. That was my presumption at the time. You can shift this thing as fast as you want to, really. As long as you know how to find the gear, you can shift it as fast as you want. And it'll always catch. But I have taken a liking to this truck in the past week. At first I was intimidated by it, didn't really want to mess with it. But now I like it. You know, it's once you get that muscle memory down in your head, it's actually easier to shift this than it is a 10-speed because you don't have to go to the left at all. You're staying in between those 4 positions the whole time, basically. Like right now, traffic started moving. It got ahead of me, but now it's up there and it's slowing down. So instead of going to the next gear up, I just flipped that auxiliary splitter and I got a little bit more without having to actually shift up. more than you would think. And I always said I prefer manual vehicles over automatics because it gives you more control over the vehicle. Well, this gives you even more control than a standard 10-speed. It's like a manual. And I'm sure an 18-speed would be the exact same. You know, it's like you don't have to use those extra gears, but they're always there if you need them or you want to use them. They're always there for you. It just gives you more options. But yeah, I know you guys don't want to just listen to me talk while I'm sitting in traffic, but I wanted to point out those things to you about this truck. Talk about it a little bit more. I really don't know how long I'm going to be in this truck, but I've been driving it for a week now, and that's all I really know is that, you know, they still haven't fixed the truck that I was in before, nor has that other truck I was talking about, the Peterbilt, become available for me to drive. So I guess, you know, time being, I'm stuck with this truck, so I might as well get as good at driving it as I possibly can. And as much negative things as I've said about this job, at least it has given me some exposure to things that I would never have exposure to. You know, working for like a huge company, you know what I'm saying? This is more of unless you're like from Canada or something, this is more of like an owner-operator option of a truck to buy. You know what I'm saying? It's just not very common for a U.S. company, especially a mega carrier, to have a Western Star. You know what I'm saying? There we go. I lost track of where I was. Yeah, I'm still grinding occasionally. Okay guys, I hope you can see that shifter down there. Hope it's in frame. Alright, here's bottom right. You see how it kind of went in a zigzag pattern to get it to go in gear? And I had to go up and to the left to get it to go in that top center position. The only position that I'm moving in where I'm actually going straight down is when I go from the top center to the bottom center. There we go. See, that would be fourth gear right there. That would be fifth. You see how I had to move it. Now as I go into sixth gear, if I make it that far, this is the only one where I'm actually going straight down. Check it out. But it's still, if you look at it, it's actually going, it's kind of returning to the center between all four of those positions before I bring it back down. Having to go over and out to that top right. I hope you can see what I'm saying. Like, I hope that the camera's capturing the movement of my hand the way I want it to. Like, this isn't in my head. I'm telling you guys, this is not in my head. This is a real thing. I'm having to do these weird movements to shift the truck. If you tried to do this in that Freightliner that I was driving, you would actually hurt your wrist trying to do this. You'd end up hurting your wrist. Let's see if I want to get a little bit more out of this gear. If I want to shift up, I'm going to go down on the auxiliary splitter. Don't let off the throttle until, well, actually, I don't need to go up. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. Traffic started slowing down in front of me. Okay, now we're moving again. So I'm in 6th gear high. I'm gonna take it back down to low, not let off the throttle, and then go straight up to 7 low. Seven high. I know this is probably a long, boring video, but I'm just like, I'm happy that I'm finally getting to experience a different kind of truck, you know? And now that I've got it figured out for the most part, I'm feeling pretty good about it, you know? Feeling a little bit more confident driving the thing. All right, just split it to the low side. I'm not gonna let off the throttle until I get ready to shift. Give it some throttle now. Got to remember that movement to get it to go in that bottom right position. This is not an easy truck to drive until you get used to it. Once you get used to it, it's a lot easier, but you have to develop a practice, a method of doing it, or it's not going to work. Now, just a minute ago when I screwed up and it jerked the truck really hard like it did, normally it won't do that, because if you're using the auxiliary splitter and you screw up like I did, it'll just go out of gear. It doesn't normally catch that hard and jerk the truck like that, because I've done that before, and I mean, that's the first time it's ever, look, there's 8 high right there. That's the first time it's ever done that to me. But anyways, I'll let you guys go. Yes, I left my screw up in there to show you that I screwed up. But I'll let you guys go since I'm moving now. Not really going to be shifting that much at this point. So thanks for watching. Come back, and yeah, I'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Later.